Hey guys, this is Tom Paul Tipton, your host for the Exchange Podcast. We're coming to you from Living Water Church in Conway, Arkansas. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode and say thank you to those who support this podcast with your contributions. Please like and share us on Facebook and get the word out, and like, subscribe, and share us on YouTube. Send any questions you have and join in on the exchange.
Wonderful intro.
Have you ever been to, I thought that intro sounds great. Have you ever been to Owensboro, Kentucky?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Bowling Green.
Bowling Green. Okay, well, it's not that far. I've been to Owensboro a few times. Different reasons. In a past lifetime, I used to do business with a funeral home in that town.
That's gloomy.
Well, not really. I mean, because I sold, I worked in unused caskets. So what our job was is we would take the caskets to different funeral homes, and they would use them as rentals. They would rent them from our company.
Okay.
So they would set them on their showroom. People would come in and say, "Hey, I like that casket. You know, they had a loved one pass. I like that casket." And then we would get the casket to them.
Those are the expensive things, right?
No, we had some that weren't that expensive. It was just the thing was it gave them a showroom. So it's not like a car showroom where you go in and I want that car, and then they go back somewhere and get another car. It was just that you had that casket, and so it was the way that our job was we would deliver that from the manufacturer to them. So we were the middleman basically. So I had to go to Owensboro. I can promise you there's no one from Owensboro, Kentucky, unless they're not from there. But if they're from there, they do not have a British accent. And I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yes. My name is JaVaughn Iversen. This is the Exchange Podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm here with Thomas. Thomas, how are you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. I've been watching this, keeping up with this whole thing with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Yeah.
And, I know that women can be abusive verbally.
Yes, they can.
And I that's typically their default and their go-to.
Yeah.
Because physically they cannot stand up to a man and fight him. So one of the things that a woman will always do, typically when they see that a divorce or a separation of some sort is coming, one of the first things they'll start, I want to make certain because this is not a blanket statement. One of the first things they'll start doing is going to the gym, getting themselves in shape. And that's, I'm not saying that's always the first sign of them leaving. That's one of the things they'll do, right? But then the other thing they'll do is they'll start talking to all their friends. They'll start talking to, maybe going on social media, talking about, being abused. And am I saying that she didn't abuse Johnny Depp? I'm not saying that. It's just, for me...
Oh, I'll say it. She definitely was abusive. Justice for Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, I think my question here, what I find really weird is, how do you take a guy from Owensboro, Kentucky, with a British accent serious? When he was doing Pirates of the Caribbean, I got it, because I was going, okay, method actor, he's getting into character. But when you're watching him on this trial, he's still talking with that same British accent.
Give him some credit. We know a lot of method actors who have gone absolutely insane.
Right.
So
right.
And this is, this is the joking part of a serious topic.
Yeah.
I mean, Johnny Depp, you're from Kentucky. It's okay. We get it. But, honestly, I have no stake in this fight. But it is important because for the longest time, we've heard believe all women.
Yes.
The longest time it has been, with the Me Too movement, that look, most of these movements, like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and all this other stuff, starts with good intentions.
Right.
and then bad players get into it, and then it just becomes nothing but bad.
Yeah.
And so the Me Too movement was saying, believe all women. You know, if a woman says that she was this, you should believe her right away. And you know something? That's what happened to Johnny Depp. If many of you may not know, but you know that Johnny Depp is the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is that.
Right.
When people say Pirates of the Caribbean, you think of Johnny Depp. The reason being this is a big deal is because Amber Heard went on to say that he was abusing him, and without even a trial, without even putting it through the justice system, Disney got rid of him. Said,
Sure.
no, you're done.
Yeah.
You're done. Your whole
And America's now done with Disney.
Yes, that.
Have you seen their stock?
Yeah. Have you seen Netflix stock?
Oh man, yeah. I was looking at these. Me and some folks last night were looking at these stocks. I mean, they're sinking faster than the Titanic, man.
Yeah, it's getting bad. And you want to know something? That's the thing, is that the people in this country as a whole aren't as stupid as some of these businesses want you to think.
No.
Hey, we just got rid of Johnny Depp because he was, Me Too movement, right, guys? We're okay. We're safe. We're the good guys. Disney over here, we're the good guys. We got rid of Johnny Depp. And then now we have this trial going on, which I wouldn't blame you if you weren't paying attention. But Amber Heard is evil.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about there is a soundbite during the trial. We're not going to play it because I don't want to get in trouble with anything, but we're not going to play it right now. You hear this soundbite, and she is laughing like an evil, and I'm going to bring their name up because it's fun, like an evil Disney villain.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely insane. Hey, Johnny, you think people are actually going to believe that a little woman like me beat up a big man like you? And then he's just calmly saying, you hit me, and you shouldn't have done that. And he's just totally beaten and broken, because as a man who's wise enough, if a woman's beating you up like that, for the most part, you're already done, because you can't. If you fight back, they're going to say, "Oh, you hit her first," because nobody can prove that you were defending yourself.
Right. Well, and there's something here I'm trying to pull up, and it may not let me to today, but there are people that think that what's going on here is Johnny Depp is trying to save his career. And I do not believe that a man should have to stand and take abuse. Just like a woman should not have to take abuse.
Right.
I'm not going to say that what Amber Heard did, or what Amber Heard, that he's not right about what he's saying that she did and different things like that. The article, here's why I wonder what's going on in reality. Do you remember, it was when Donald Trump was still in office, and jokingly, however it was he asked it, it didn't help him out at all. As a matter of fact, after he asks this question, this really, and I'm not defending Disney because Disney probably had other reasons here, but it was shortly after this that he was dropped and was not considered for the next Pirates of the Caribbean. But there was something, and I can't remember where he was at, but he asked the question, when was the last time an actor assassinated a president? And obviously he's referring to John Wilkes Booth.
Yeah.
And after that, it was like...
And who's saying this? This is
Johnny Depp asked
Johnny
this
Depp.
question.
Okay.
And so it was like from that point forward, his career just kind of hit the rocks. And so it's like now I'm wondering if... Okay, I got it right here. It was around June 23rd of 2017. So Trump had not been in office very long. As a matter of fact, he had taken the oath in January of 2016. Okay, so
2017, right?
Yeah. Sorry, the election was in 2016. So So in January 2017, he takes the oath. So fast forward, I guess 6 months, somewhere around there. Johnny Depp's he's being interviewed, and he asks that question. And he was in the UK. He was at Glastonbury Music Festival in the UK, and just it's not even an interview. He's because Depp's a musician too,
right?
And you can kind of follow throughout the years. And Depp's got some. And I'm not making a personal judgment on the guy, but he's got some severe things going on in his private life. And so then here he is in the United Kingdom asking this question. Well, everybody, if you know anything about history, everybody knows what he's referring to. And so that didn't set well. Let's take the guy who was Lieutenant Dan. And I'm not saying he would do this, but let's take the guy who was Lieutenant Dan on what was that movie?
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Come on, man. How can you forget that one?
Gary Sinise. Okay. What if he were to ask that right now with Joe Biden sitting in office? Everything that Gary Sinise has done, and I'm just using him because I don't think he would ever say anything like this. I'm just using him as an example. Everything he has ever done would be wiped out instantly.
Yeah.
And so I go, okay, I don't think I've got the same questions about this that I did with the whole Will Smith thing. And at this point, it looks like probably all of my questions about Will Smith was probably wrong. That probably was a real instance. He probably really did, I mean, out of anger, slap Chris Rock. But again, I'm looking at this and I'm going, I would think that if I were on trial and I knew that possibly millions are at stake, I would be the most real self of myself that I could be.
These are adult pretenders. That there's a YouTube channel that I watch, and they coined that term. Shout out to Nerdrotic. But they said they're adult pretenders. That is think about that real quick. They pretend. All they do is pretend in their life.
Mm-hmm.
These guys don't know what reality is. I was thinking about it driving up here. I was leaving my apartment, and I saw these two kids fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, man, those kids fish, and they were fishing next to an older gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, how often do those kids go fishing? Because I see them a lot. I see that old man a lot. I think, how many times they go fishing? And somebody, like a Will Smith or a Johnny Depp, might say, hey, kids, don't talk to strangers. And they would say, okay, Will Smith, I trust you, when they know nothing about them.
Mm-hmm.
But that man who's fishing there probably fishes there all the time. Probably, hey, you want some? Here's some bait. You know, that is a stranger in a sense. But the thing is, in the real world, we don't stay strangers.
Right.
You know, the thing is, hey, kids, don't talk to strangers. Right, don't talk to strangers. But if my kid's with me, or if my kid's with a group of kids, with a group, you know, that one stranger isn't a threat.
Yeah.
Instead of teaching all kids, hey, don't talk to strangers, teach them to get to know their fellow man. These adult pretenders spew these ideas that they don't even know what happens in the real world. Will Smith hasn't been in the real world since the 90s.
Okay.
I mean, think about that. So when he goes up and he slaps somebody, he thinks, oh, this is totally fine. We can do this in the real world. No, you cannot, buddy. If you would have slapped me like that, we would have been on the floor. Even if I got my butt kicked or anything,
right.
At that point, I need to defend myself. I don't know what you're going to do next.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that ultimately brings me to the question I've been asking, and that, or not me, but this is a question that's asked by everybody. We hear it all the time, and a lot of people who don't even go to church ask this one question out of this one verse in Matthew, and it says, "Do not judge lest you be judged, for in the way you judge, you will be judged, and by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. And why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can I say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." Now, so the question would be, should Christians be judging at all? Should the church be judging? Now, my answer to that question is yes. Now, I'm using the whole thing with Johnny Depp because you brought something up. and they were talking about adult pretenders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think a lot of us have seen the meme. And again, what I'm trying to do here is the whole point of this is to look at relevant issues, issues of the day, and go, okay, why are we so messed up in our society? Why are things so weird right now? Seems like, it's completely turned upside down on its head. And one of the reasons is because the church has refused to step up and do, and I'm not saying be judgmental in the sense of telling people and condemning people to hell, because that's not our job. We cannot do that. Paul says we do not judge outside the house of faith. We judge within the church, which within the household of faith. So our job is not to judge people as to where they're going, but there are certain judgment calls that we as Christians, and Christian leaders, pastors, and one of them is the meme, and it's kind of a comical thing, kind of a funny way of pointing out a truth. And I don't know if you've seen it. It says, "Who thought or something to the effect, who thought we would be living in a world where a young boy cannot, and I'm going to be kosher, cannot play an indigenous person, but a grown man can pretend like he's a woman." Right? And this goes back to the whole transgender thing. And so, again, you've got Johnny Depp. And again, I don't care why he does it. I celebrate anybody's freedom. You want to talk like you got a British accent, go for it. But yet, the guy, there was the movie Tropic Thunder. And the guy who played Iron Man, I can't think of his name off.
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. In that movie, and I don't recommend anybody watching this movie. I'm pointing this out because I keep up with a lot of different things, issues that are going on, and I think a lot of us see it. But he kind of got into some hot water several years after that movie came out, because in the movie he plays a method actor.
They couldn't do it. They couldn't cancel him.
No, they tried.
They couldn't. And here's the thing. Jamie Foxx on the Joe Rogan podcast said, Robert Downey Jr. is our boy. We know where he was coming from.
Right.
He said we knew the intent.
Yeah.
And I think...
And he wasn't making fun of anyone.
No, and I think, he was making fun of the
method
idea
actors.
of method actors becoming blackface. Yeah. And I think that is when the intent is lost and all you can do is judge, because that's what judging is. Judging is making a judgment call.
Right. And in that sense, like what you just mentioned, that was the correct judgment call right there.
Yeah, because we knew, I got into this argument with my brother one time, and we were having a discussion, and he was, he's just getting on me. He was like, well, Christians shouldn't judge. And I was like, well, we got to make judgment calls. We got to be safe in the world. If I see somebody and, they look like they've been smoking meth, which you could tell when somebody's been smoking a drug like meth, I'm going to make a judgment call and say I'm not going to invite them into my house without getting to thoroughly know them first. That's a judgment call. Everybody makes a judgment call. You have to. And, I will say, when I was younger, my grandmother's in town, and she was telling my wife, he was very impulsive. At one point, he was at this person's house. Then he was at this person's house. Because I was a kid, I was carefree. That, that carefree, childlike wonder has to go away as you get older, because people would take advantage of that. And there's too many people, and it's pretty much my generation. I would say anybody between the ages of 20 and 35, Disney adults.
Yeah.
They want to be carefree so much that they're willing to still try to be like a child in some way, shape, or form. We need to stop giving so much power to these adult pretenders. I'm going to keep using that phrase for actors because, again, these people, when they say, hey, do this, do that, vote, blah, yes, go vote, but vote a certain way, do these things, I endorse this. Guys, these people haven't known what struggle was for the last decade or so. A lot of them don't,
well, especially up until they got their first blockbuster.
Exactly. So, we're talking about people who have no idea what it means to struggle. And the ones who do are are old enough to start dying off, unfortunately,
Right.
because they'll say, "Hey, there are real people in the world," and Clint Eastwood is a good example of that, where he's, as much as I disagree with him on a lot of things, I can notice that, hey, this guy right here, he's going to tell you the truth, and he's not going to sugarcoat that he has money, and he doesn't know the struggle, but he knows that there is a struggle,
and that's probably one of the reasons why I mean, I'm sure if I looked at it long enough, I could look at something and go, well, I disagree with him on that. I think I was having a conversation with someone driving down the road here today. I was on the phone with him, and again, one of the things that one of the reasons why Donald Trump was so popular wasn't because he was this guy out of left field that shouldn't have been president, which that was one of the main things that made him popular. But one of the main things that made him popular, especially with those on the right, and even some people in the middle, was he was this guy who just said what he thought, whether you agreed with it or not. And it's not that maybe some of the things he said he would have been better off not to have said, even still yet, but it is the fact that when he says it, he's not going to sugarcoat it and worry about your feelings. And while there is a time to say things with more of a kid glove, there are times too to just come out and just say it. And that's really one of the things I've been thinking about with this whole Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trials. I'm going, I think one of the things that concerns me is I'm seeing all this stuff on Facebook and on different social media about it, and it's like, we can't coddle this guy. I mean, and they want to lump him in with Will Smith, and and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. What about personal responsibility? I mean, Will Smith had personal responsibility not to walk on that stage and slap Chris Rock, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
I don't care how much his wife pushed him into something. I can't, if it would have been different if Chris Rock would have been saying something that was just absolutely, hey, that's my wife you're talking about. I'm not going to put up with this. There comes that point, right?
Yeah, but you could still use words there, even if they are angry words.
Yeah, and so my issue is not so much that Johnny Depp is suing or whatever's going on in this trial, Amber Heard. The thing is I'm looking at all the stuff and I'm going, why are we crusading this and making this an issue? I mean, kind of going back. Okay, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. This is why I so disagree with our political left. We have people that want traditional martial arts schools to get rid of the karate gi, which we know what that is. I think most people know what that is. That's it's the traditional martial arts dress that they wear. And the reason for that is because they call it cultural misappropriation. And they will take certain things, okay, where a guy like Morton Downey will do that movie, and they want to cancel him, not because their initial excuse was, well, blackface, but that really wasn't it. It was because he was. I mean, actors want so bad to be taken seriously, and so here's a guy who's making fun of that, right? And they want to get rid of him for that. And so even to the point that the black community came to his defense, Robert Downey, not Morton Downey. Morton Downey is a different guy. Robert Downey, they come to his defense and say, hey, he's not doing this to be offensive. He's making fun of a whole, group of people in the industry. And and we have lost our sense of humor. And there's nothing humorous about what supposedly Amber Heard did to Johnny Depp. But we have so gotten into this country and in our society that, Jesus here calls them hypocrites, because what's going on here is, okay, one of the lures to traditional martial arts for kids is they get the belt system. That makes you feel like you've accomplished something. Not only that, white kids, black kids, Hispanic kids, all wear the same. What you would think that the left is supposedly going to celebrate, and that is unity. They don't want it. They are in reality pushing segregation. I mean, you think about this. They're pushing segregation because what they're doing is they're saying, well, if you're not Asian, then you can't wear that because that's cultural misappropriation. So instead of saying, hey, I want to get into martial arts, that'll help give me a better understanding of the Asian culture, something I can learn to appreciate. No, you can't do that because you're not the right skin color. But it really has nothing to do with that. It has to do with they're bringing division. And that's really what I am seeing going on with social media over this whole thing.
I'm not going to call it appropriation anymore. I'm just going to call it cultural appreciation. So when somebody says, hey, you're appropriating my culture, no, I'm appreciating. Mm-hmm. I mean, when's it going to stop? Because at one point, someone's going to get onto me. You cannot watch anime.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'll tell you right now, you want to know what community is going to be fighting people over that? The black community. Because we love our anime. There? Oh, it's very popular in the black community. I'm not saying it's not popular anywhere else. I'm saying, look, a lot of black people in the 90s and the early 2000s grew up on Gundam and Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho. I mean, those type of shows were really, they were culturally, they impacted the culture in Japan, sure, but they impacted the black community as well, to the point where, growing up, I have a lot of friends who would say, I grew up without a dad, but Goku or Piccolo or certain characters from these shows, gave them an idea of what a father figure was, and they turned out to be great men. Right. And because the story was good. That's another topic I want to talk about next time. Is that there are stories coming out of the East of heroes and good men, whereas we have these stories of Will Smith and Johnny Depp. And again, I'm not discounting Johnny Depp being abused, but this story is so huge, and this is where I think this is a good segue into what I wanted to talk about. The subway shooting happened a little over. Those of you who don't know, there was a subway shooting, 23 injured. I don't believe anybody died, but it took place April 15th, so last week, so 8 days ago, I believe. Yeah,
this is about right. Mm-hmm.
And so here's a story that doesn't want to be talked about, but what can we do to show off something greater than that? Well, let's talk about this adult pretender who was getting beat up by his wife. Now, again, justice for Johnny. I'm all for it. However, the shooting suspect was an individual, was a male. No. The shooting suspect was a black male. Mm-hmm. Not many people know this, but a little over a month ago, here in our great state of Arkansas, Dumas, Arkansas. This is from KARK. Dumas, Arkansas officials with the Arkansas State Police said that they have made their first arrest in the shooting incident at a car show in Dumas that left one person dead, 26 injured. Troopers said on Wednesday that the 22-year-old Brandon DeAndre Knight was arrested after being released from the hospital around 9:40. You look up that story, it is a black male. We have a lot of times where people talk about white rage and how white people are shooting up a whole bunch of people. Nobody wants to talk about this because it's a black man who did the shooting. Just like when that kid in Texas shot up the school, it was a black kid. Mm-hmm. And then people wanted to instantly, a lot of people hate it when we say, hey, it's mental health for the white kids. And then when it's a black kid, it's, oh, his mental health. But you were just yelling at me saying that a white kid had mental health problems and that's why he shot up the school. Don't come to me with that. If we're going to play on the same page, and we can all play on the same page, they're responsible for their actions. I agree with that. And the problem is that we have a tough time, especially in our country, that something in Dumas, Arkansas, this story was brought to me by a listener of the show. Said, hey, did you hear what happened in Dumas, Arkansas? Man, I've only heard of Dumas one time when I was at the police academy. And I said, no, what's going on? And they brought this story to my attention because it needs to be talked about more. Something I want to do on the show is a little bit more is to give some local news, just to, good news too. But this is important because today we're talking about Johnny Depp. And, something I don't think I should be, the bigger spotlight should be on these shootings that took place. Right. Those victims need to be remembered. Those victims' stories need to be told because we everyday people need to stand up for each other. We can't keep standing up for these actors and adult pretenders. We can't be standing up for these corporations who generally do not care about your moral standings whatsoever. It all, thank goodness for capitalism, but it's all for the money. And so when you have these things like Disney coming out and firing Johnny Depp and making it a huge story for the last, 5 years.
Yeah.
And then everyday people are getting shot, people are dying, and we're not talking about those things, the problems that are happening, and how we can solve those solutions. But instead, we want to talk about, hey, Johnny Depp was being beat by his girlfriend. That's too bad on him. He chose wrong.
Right. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying that's it sounds harsh, but the thing is, that's too bad. You need to vet who you're dating a little bit better than.
And mentioning the shootings. I mean, it has to be clear across the board. I mean, I'm going to just point that one out. The law has to be fair across the board, because I mean this Timothy Simpkins down in Texas, I think was that last October. Black kid goes in. He's 18 years old. He shoots up the school, leaves several injured, and he's also on aggravated assault. But then he's released like within 24 hours on bail. Okay. Now that has nothing to do with a black or white issue. That has to do with, and I'm going to read this scripture here. It says in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, beginning with verse 1, it says, Does any one of you, when he has a case against his neighbor, dare to go to law before the unrighteous and not before the saints? Or do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And if the world is judged by you, are you not competent to constitute the smallest law courts? Do you not know that we shall judge angels? How much more matters of this life? So we are to judge certain matters as Christians. We are told to do that. And so in a situation, and this goes back to another podcast that we did several weeks ago, and that is that our form of government are meant for are meant for righteous and people of faith, right? So people that have some kind of fear of God. I mean, that is how our constitutional republic is set up. So when a kid, I don't care what your skin color is, when you go in and you shoot people, that says something about the society as a whole. When you can get into a situation, and apparently, what was it, Amber Heard who cut off Johnny Depp's finger?
Yep.
Okay. That says something about the society. And there are people that are crazy. There are people that are just flat out crazy. And the thing is, you don't know that sometimes until you get involved with that person. So where does that leave you? So I by all means say, hey, if something's going on, you need to take certain steps to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that what's going on with Johnny Depp is fake. I'm not saying that. However, we as Christians are going to have to look at all of these different views from a biblical standpoint and go, okay, what is the real root issue here? And we as Christians cannot make certain judgment calls if we're not led by the Spirit of the Lord to do so, and we're not grounded in His Word. And so, I find it comical. I mean, I do. I find it comical that you got this guy who has for the last, decade been talking with a British accent, and he's not from Britain. I'm going, I celebrate. Go for it. You're an American. This is America. You want to talk with a British accent? Go for it. I find it funny. I think if I was a juror on that, I would have to look at that and go, is this for real right now?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people in influential areas. I say influential areas. Who became millionaires over the weirdest things. Yeah. And then when they want to be taken serious, they get upset because they're not being taken serious. It's like, listen, you tattooed your face and you called yourself a little dumpster. And here's the thing. A lot of people would say, oh, you're an old fogey type mindset. No, that's not, there's nothing wrong with being thinking responsibly. And to go back to what you were saying about in Matthew with judgments and how lest ye be judged, I was taught that, look, if you're going to judge someone, just know that you're going to be judged too.
Right.
If you're going to judge somebody on the basis of, hey, don't do this, and then you go and do it, you will be judged, maybe even harder because you are judging against that. So all it's saying is listen, you better have your character upright when you make a judgment call. So when I see somebody with a face tattoo, yeah, my first judgment call is they must have done something really bad in their life, something dumb in their life. And here's the thing. If you get to know them, they might tell you, yeah, this wasn't a smart idea. This wasn't a good idea. But they own it. Here's the thing. I can respect somebody who says, I own what I did. This is my scar, whether it's a physical, a mental, or a spiritual scar. And they own it. But they also tell somebody, like the younger generation, hey, don't do this. Don't go off and do. For instance, one of the people I've always told my parents about, I said, you know who I'd probably have a good time having coffee with is Snoop Dogg. Because Snoop Dogg on Reddit had an AMA about 10 years back. I was a senior in high school. And somebody said, hey, how do I get into how do I do what you did? And he says, and, it could be him, could be somebody typing it for him, but it sounded like Snoop Dogg. The message said, listen, nephew, go and get yourself an education. Don't jump into the things I was doing. Learn how to build your own thing. Very encouraging, and I thought to myself, man, I disagree on 90% of the things he said, but that right there means I can sit down and have a conversation with him. And I think that's what's missing is those conversations of sitting down and just taking responsibility and helping the next generation out, because we would have less shootings. Right. Would we not? We would have less people getting into relationships where they're being constantly disrespected. Listen, it is on the forefront of our minds. Do not sexually assault anybody, especially women. That's on the forefront of our minds. We get that. Do not harm women. That is on the forefront of our minds. Let's balance it out by saying we need to respect each other.
You're right. Well, absolutely. And, there's a lot of reasons. Number one, as I said, the church has shrunk back in our country on so many issues. And reading this scripture here that I read out of 1 Corinthians, and he says, do you not know that you're going to judge angels? And if you're going to judge angels, then you are competent enough to judge in the smallest courts. And so if you're going to judge angels, you're also, how much more are we going to judge matters of life? So the practice in judging for the millennial reign and for all of eternity starts right here in this life. And so, we can look at, and this was a report that came out of the Washington Examiner. And this was a quote by the now President Biden. And it says, make no mistake, in 20 years, terrorism has metastasized. The threat has evolved beyond Afghanistan. Biden said, describing the lingering threats of the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda before warning of a new war in America's backyard. And it goes on and it says, we won't ignore what our intelligence agencies have determined to be the most lethal terrorist threat to our homeland today. White supremacy is terrorism. Okay, most people would not disagree. White supremacists are terrorists.
It's bad.
By and large.
It's bad.
Okay, so when he makes that statement, what happens is there are people that are listening to other terrorist groups, such as BLM and the now Black Panther Party, and the Nation of Islam, who says, that calls people blonde hair and blue-eyed devils, and they take that and they go, well, then I've got to level the playing field. And then there's violence that starts to spring up. Is that just a black problem? No. Is that just a white problem? No. It's a sin problem. It's a human problem.
Yeah.
And so this is why that the church has to be stronger, and we cannot afford to allow our voice. Again, I'm gonna refer back to what we discussed last week with Elon Musk. I don't know if you saw this, but Ron DeSantis is actually teaming up with Elon Musk. The reason why is because Elon Musk has a really good argument based on fiduciary responsibility. And what that responsibility is that the stockholders in Twitter are losing money. And so by losing that money, and he's offering them $48 billion, the board of Twitter has a fiduciary responsibility to not allow the stockholders, and Florida, the state of Florida being one of those stockholders. So this is why DeSantis is now in that argument.
Oh, yeah.
Because Florida, because there's people, and DeSantis agree, disagree, love him, it doesn't matter. He has a responsibility as the governor.
It's one of those things where it's like, hey, you have a responsibility to make sure it doesn't get too bad, so therefore take the offer,
yes,
so to speak.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. See, so one of the things is, do we agree with everything that Elon Musk? No, because Elon Musk's got some political ideologies that I disagree with. But there have always been. You can go all through the Scripture. You can read about it with Elijah, Elisha. You can read about it with Daniel. The Bible says that there were people that were within the courts of the kings that were against. I mean, Elijah, for example. There was a king there, or Elijah rather, sorry.
Which
there was
one,
a king,
Elijah or Elisha?
Elisha.
Okay.
There was a king that, it was Ahab, but there was a Naboth, or Nabal. No, Naboth wasn't. I think Nabal was his name, but I have to go back and look at that.
Oh, man, these names.
He was a man who liked Elisha.
Yeah.
And so he did things that was beneficiary to Elisha. Why? Because God always has people. And I can certainly see where God would use a person like Elon Musk, because the church is going to have to make certain. I'm not saying get involved in politics and become a flag waver. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that we need to be more involved, and we need to be. We are capable of being part of the public square. And right now, the public square has become social media.
Yeah, it's got to be really important to you, and if it's not, then obviously what we said was for nothing. But this is why the Exchange Podcast is the Exchange Podcast. This is why a lot of people are podcasting. I just waved my arms. I'm not on camera or anything. I don't know why I did that, but
He's frantically waving.
Yeah. This is why podcasts are around, because listen, whether you're on iTunes or YouTube or whatever, there needs to be a conversation about these things. I haven't heard people talk too much about Dumas, Arkansas. I've heard people talk about...
I've never heard about it till you brought it up today.
Yeah. There are people who are talking about Will Smith. Not many people are hearing about the many racial... the racially tense conversations that the shooter in New York was having on his YouTube channel. And not many people are... they're talking about Johnny Depp. They're talking about all these other things that really do not matter in the grand scheme of things. What matters is the lives of everybody, not just not just the rich folk. You know, even Elon Musk is a conversation that overshadowed the New York subway shooting. Why is that a big deal? Well, it's a big deal and it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal that a billionaire is spending his money, because a billionaire is going to do that.
Yeah. What's
important is that he's spending his money on the public square, which is now Twitter.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and you know, a lot of places, a lot of podcasts have their shows advertised on Twitter. So I mean, you have all these different places that should be important. And I would take a step back and just look at all the influence that these things have done, i.e., YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, podcasts in general.
That's right.
And really think about, man, should I get involved? Like Thomas was saying, you don't have to go outside and start waving your flag and start shouting from the roof. You can, if you want. It's totally fine.
I'm all for
but
it.
I would say have a game plan. For instance, Thomas and I are going to be doing our best to get on college campuses here in the next summer break. I know I'll be off, so I'm going to try my best to get onto University of Central Arkansas campus, just talking with anybody who's at school, just to pick their brain. And, you know, we invite everybody to come to Living Water Church Conway, because we want people to have a discourse in this church, you know, listen to the message, marinate in it, and then have a conversation that really spurs on more ideas, because this is where the ideas start. It starts in the church. It starts on the podcast. It starts between one another. I'm not talking about these people and their billions and billions of dollars. I sound like Trump, but it is important that we just have these conversations so we can learn how to judge correctly, because just because those of us who are believers are told that we're going to judge angels doesn't mean we get to go around swinging our gavel right now at everybody and saying, you're judged, you're judged, you're judged. There's a method at it, and the only way to get that method down is to discuss with other believers and to get it right.
Well, we have to. What I mean by judging, again, no, we are not swinging a gavel and judging people to some kind of eternal destination. Only God does that. We judge these matters because it helps keep us from being caught blindsided.
Yeah.
And see, as the church, once we put our stamp of approval on something, there's no retracting that.
Yep.
Right? So we have to be led by the Spirit, and the Spirit through us will make the proper judgment calls.
Yeah. And I think today was a great exchange. I had a wonderful time talking with Thomas. I'm always happy to bring new stories to him, like what's happened in Dumas. Go ahead and look that up. If there's any way that we can support any of the survivors, and however we can, we will. I'll make sure that there's a link to that on our Facebook and our YouTube. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. We're glad to have you.
Have a good weekend, and we'll see you here next time.